Let's go to another noon game in a kind of reignited rivalry, Dawn, in Texas at Arkansas. Kind of always mentioned before, like the BYU-Utah game last week, how conference realignment, yes, has killed a lot of rivalries. It's also reignited some as well. BYU-Utah, the Holy War is back, and this Texas-Arkansas one is back now in the SEC. But the storylines, no, for me, Texas might not be as safe in the playoff race as you might think, if you really look into them right now. So there's kind of a logjam in the SEC right now. There are 6 teams with a conceivable path to at least an at-large spot in the college football playoff. 4 of those 6 teams have 2 losses on the year. So those 4, you can look at them and say, hey, if you suffer a third loss, you're done. 2 of those teams that don't have a second loss are Texas and Tennessee. So conventional thinking would say, okay, they can afford one more loss and still be alive. Dawn, you look at Texas' resume right now. It's not nearly as strong as you might think. The Longhorns have not beaten a single school that's currently ranked in the top 25. They lost convincingly to Georgia a month ago as well. If they suffer a second loss, a 10-2 record probably will be enough to get them in, but it might not be enough as well. So it's definitely a weird conversation for a team that's going to be in the top 5 of the college football playoff ranking later on tonight. I don't know if they can afford another loss just looking at their resume. Like I said, their best win is over Vanderbilt. They beat them by 3. Other than that, you beat a Michigan team that's probably going to go 6-6 on the year. You beat an Oklahoma team that's going to go 5-7 on the year, and not much else after that either. I don't know, man. I just look at this Texas schedule right now. I don't know if 10-2 will be enough for me, at least, to put them in the playoffs.
I'm starting to think it won't, and I think we're going to start facing a reality here where there's going to be either a 10-2 or maybe even a really good 9-3 that gets left out from the SEC from the playoff. Because again, you mentioned it. You look at Texas; their best win is a 3-point win over Vanderbilt, and I think the idea behind this season and maybe Texas having a little bit softer SEC schedule was, hey, that win at Michigan, right? And Michigan's still going to be at least in the top 20, and they're going to have still a good season coming, and that just hasn't happened. So now you're talking about a team that doesn't have many good wins. You mentioned it, they got dominated. This is a game they can't lose. If Texas were to lose this game, I don't even know that the A&M game would matter for them, because Arkansas, this is a team, they're coming in, 5-4, right?
Yeah.
And so you're talking about Texas, they could be that team. They could be that team. It might be a case here where they need to win out at least in the regular season,
yes,
which would put them in the SEC title game.
I think then they'll be in.
And then they would be, even if they lost that game, I think at 11-2, you would feel a lot better about them, at least with the A&M win now, at A&M being their best win, plus the Vandy win, plus still the win at Michigan. I guess it means
plus
something,
11-1 in
right?
the SEC is enough.
Right. So I do think you're right. I think they're in a must-win spot here through the rest of the regular season, because it's not nearly the best resume in the SEC among this bunch.
And listen, there's a lot of people that are arguing, it's about how good the team is when you play them. It's like, no. Listen, we are wrong on teams. The media is wrong a lot on teams. Like that SMU loss to BYU, Dawn, you and I looked at each other when that happened. We're like, that's a bad loss for SMU. Now all of a sudden it looks like a great loss for SMU. So I don't agree with Michigan was a top 10 team at the time. No, they were never a top 10 team. And that they proved that later on in the season.
It's the fallacy of preseason rankings. Right? It's like maybe we shouldn't rank teams till week 6 or so, but that's tradition. They're going to do it anyway.
No, that's the thing, is like whenever people are like, it's about how good they were at the time. No, it's not. It really is not. The resumes get updated every week. So a win in week 2 over Michigan can look worse as the season goes on if they don't play that well. The Oklahoma win doesn't look nearly as good either, with them might not even making a bowl game this year. So I don't agree with that thinking at all of, it's about what they are at the time. No, it's not, because we are constantly wrong about teams, about how good they are at the end of the season. So that, I think, is one thing, too, that doesn't really help Texas too much, because the Michigan win, even though they're top 10 at the time, they're not close to a top 10 team right now. Oklahoma, I think it was like top 20 at the time. They're not close to a top 20 team right now. So that's a problem with the Texas resume right now. Let's dive into the game a little bit more, though, Dawn. You have the Texas offense with a quarterback in Quinn Ewers who looked unreal in that Florida win this past weekend. What should we be looking out for when he has the ball?
Look, he's found a rhythm, right? Two games coming off injury where he struggled against Oklahoma and Georgia. Now, his last 2 games, he's thrown 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and the 2 interceptions were batted at the line of scrimmage, so they weren't even really his fault. 1 turnover-worthy play across the 2 games, but I think, you know what, I'm taking this one from you, because when we previewed LSU Arkansas, and I picked the wrong SEC upset that week, and I picked Arkansas to beat LSU, and you told me, you're like, Dalton, they're secondary. Arkansas secondary. Just trust me. And I was like, no, they'll raise it back. They'll figure it. Taylor Green. They'll figure out a way to win the game.
Yeah.
And it's only gotten worse since then. Look, Arkansas right now, they've got the 6th worst coverage grade in the FBS. They just played Ole Miss 2 weeks ago and gave up 63 points, and the coverage grade was a 30. This is a real problem. This is the problem for Arkansas. Run defense, Landon Jackson, those guys up front, solid. I think even in this game they could have a solid day in run defense. I think it's a fun matchup up front. But when you're talking about anytime you're walking on the field with a bottom 10 secondary, especially with a team with the weapons that Texas has, right?
And Sarkisian drawing it up.
And Steve Sarkisian drawing it up. It's a problem. Yeah. It's a real problem, and it's really the one thing that's kind of sinking some of the success Arkansas has had this year. And they've looked better than we thought they would in the preseason. We thought in the preseason this might be the worst team in the SEC, but they've looked better offensively. They're pretty good in the front seven, but the secondary needs a lot of work. I think the big thing I'm looking for in this game, you mentioned Sarkisian, designs ways better than almost anyone in the country of getting yards after catch for his guys. Just get his guys open in the flat, screen game, RPOs, all that stuff. Set his athletes up to make plays after the catch. Texas has the 5th most yards after catch in the country. Arkansas has allowed the 9th most yards after catch in the country. There's a lot of times I even watch Arkansas, and they don't give up a ton of home run balls necessarily, but the open field tackling and the angles they take and trying to just prevent yards after catch, it's a mess. It's a real problem. It's not a great matchup for them on the outside. I expect Sarkisian to stay right in his wheelhouse concepts. Again, RPOs, screens, quick balls to the flat, things that Quinn Ewers is comfortable with. Take an occasional shot maybe to mix it up. But I think Texas weapons, Isaiah Bond, even Gunnar Helm on the outside who's had a great year, I think they're going to get a lot of yards after catch in this game. It's been a problem for Arkansas all year.
It really has been. And one defense that has not had a lot of problems this year is a Texas defense, and they're going up against Taylor Green, who has had a lot better of a year this year, Dawn. So right now, Arkansas is 23rd in EPA per play, basically how efficient an offense is. They were 103rd last year. And we look at that, it's like, what's changed? Well, what's changed is that Taylor Green came in from Boise State, and not only that, he has made a massive, massive jump. He is right now 12th in the FBS in passing grade this year at 84 and is 5th among Power 4 quarterbacks with 550 rushing yards. He's a freak athlete with a big arm at 6'6", tying for 15th in the country with a 92.1 passing grade on 10-plus yard throws. So 92.1. He's a very, very good quarterback. He's been very, very good for Arkansas all year. The issue is, though, he's going up against the highest graded defense in college football this year in Texas. The Longhorns also lead the nation in coverage grade. And on 10-plus yard throws, where Taylor Green really thrives, they have the lowest passer rating allowed at 24.3. A 24.3 passer rating allowed on 10-plus yard throws. And Dalton, that's even crazier when if you complete a 10-plus yard throw, the passer rating goes way up as well. So a 24.3 is amazing for Texas defense this year. And also, they have not allowed a quarterback to rush for 70 yards in any game this season. I will say, Green, against really good defenses, has been kind of a mixed bag so far. So he had sub-55 grades in losses to Texas A&M and Ole Miss. But against Tennessee, he had an 85.1 grade, and that led to them beating Tennessee in that one. It also should be noted, too, before we move on, Taylor Green does have a knee sprain that he suffered against Ole Miss a couple weeks ago. Sam Pittman said if they had a game during their bye week, he would not be able to play. He's probably going to be able to play. He said he's probable for Saturday, but also if that takes away his rushing ability, that's a big loss for Arkansas as well. So not only does Arkansas need Taylor Green to be healthy on Saturday, but he needs to be an elite version of Taylor Green on Saturday as well if they want a chance of pulling off this upset.
And I think Jaquindon Jackson's status is up in the air as well. I think he's a little more questionable than Green is. I'm pretty sure Sam Pittman has a pretty good idea of that, that Taylor Green is going to play. But I like something you mentioned there about Texas secondary, because the big thing last year was too many home run balls. They could catch up and tackle when it came to throws in front of them, but they had a problem, and you saw it in that semifinal game against Michael Penix in Washington where they struggled to cover the deep ball. This year they have fixed that. That was the biggest weakness on their team, and you're right, it's made them arguably the best defense in the country. Those guys on the back end, Malik Muhammad, Janae Barron, Andrew Makuba when he's been healthy, I mean, they've been spectacular in the secondary, and Taylor Green To his credit, he's played mostly really well, but he's a high-variance quarterback, right? We talk about Jalen Milroe being a little bit like that. He's a guy with a huge arm. He can run. He takes shots down the field for sure. That's what Talon Green is going to do. And look, in this game, this is a spot where Texas, that secondary, last year, this is the type of game that could have hurt them, right? A team that could throw the ball way downfield like that and take deep shots on them. This year, they're preventing those deep shots, and it's benefited them big time.
Absolutely, yes. So Quinton Jackson suffered an ankle injury. He's missed the last 2 games, but Sam Pittman also said he's working back to play in this game. He's also from Texas, Dalton, and he actually, his freshman year, then he redshirted. He didn't play at all. But he was at Texas his freshman year. Then he transferred to Utah. Then he transferred to Arkansas. So this is a school that Jaquinton Jackson is very familiar with. He spent 1 year at Texas before transferring out of there, too. So we'll see what Jaquinton Jackson can do against his former team if he does play in this game. But ultimately, Dalton, will Texas suffer what could be a fatal second loss, or will they survive and move on to the next game?
I think they'll be fine. I think you saw the level of urgency that they played with in the Florida game and just needing to put that game away. Don't give a team any sort of ray of light that there's hope to beat them. I think you're going to see a similar thing here against Arkansas. I think the secondary has been really, really rough, and I think Texas defense is actually the thing that gives me the most confidence in picking such a wide spread. I have a Texas 38 and Arkansas 17. I just think their defense, I've been so impressed with it. I'll go back to even the Georgia game. Their defense was not bad in that game. They were just put in awful situations with the turnovers, right? I think Texas defense carries them through this one. I think Quinn Ewers does about the same job, probably grade somewhere in the 70s, and get the ball to his athletes in space. And they'll make plays after the catch, and Sarkisian will make it happen with the play calling. I think Texas rolls pretty well. I think we're rolling towards that Texas and Texas A&M game at Kyle Field the last weekend of the season being the pivotal game probably for both teams.
Yeah, I'm with that. I got Texas winning this one as well, 34-21. I think Talon Green will be kept in check by Texas' defense, and Quinn Ewers, like you mentioned before, the very, very vulnerable Arkansas secondary is probably going to tee off against them, honestly. So I think Texas win this game by multiple scores and move one step closer to securing a college football playoff spot. I want to just talk about there's a lot of people in the chat right now saying, listen, we're in the SEC right now, we're taking care of business, like if we lose again, like whatever. But like I just want people to understand, like, yes, it's not Texas's fault that their schedule has looked easier now, because they tried. Like, scheduling Michigan usually is a massive game, but Texas is kind of a victim of just teams not being as good as they once were. Like, they're a victim of Oklahoma not being as good as they once were. They're a victim of Michigan not being as good as they once were. And in this college football playoff era that we're in, we're picking teams to make the playoff, right? And you're looking at resumes off that. So yeah, it might be a little unfair for Texas, considering like it was not like they scheduled an easy schedule on purpose, but it's just how the cards fall.
They've fallen into the category of, say, a Missouri or a Penn State, where you go, okay, we know they're better than these teams. We know they're better than Florida with a third-string quarterback. You know, coming into the year, we didn't think Vandy would be their toughest game by any means, right? We know they're better than Mississippi State. I mean, at this point, the way Oklahoma had been playing all year, we knew they were better than Oklahoma. That was the only way that game was going to go. So, no, look, we were at the Michigan game. At the time, we thought it was going to be a bigger deal than it is now, with Michigan being 5-5 at the moment. You're right. Sometimes it's a matter of circumstance, and strength of schedule can kind of fool you a little bit. But no, they've taken care of business when they needed to. The big game against Georgia, they came out flat. Now they have to fight through it.
Yeah, I see a lot of people in the chat who've been like, what else do you guys want? It's just like, sometimes it's just how it happens. Like, sometimes it's just, unfortunately, how your schedule looks.
The reality is, all we want, win these last 3 games.
Yeah, exactly. You win those and you're in.
Beat Texas A&M, and we got nothing to argue about. They're getting in.
Definitely. All right, so we both have Texas winning this game. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.